A sufficient reason why you should want to realize your true nature is because frequent insomnia comes from being fundamentally unbalanced. Don't you tend to lose yourself in doings all day long? Getting up, morning ablutions, eating, working, washing, exercising, socializing, cleaning, and so on and on. All the while, there's a constant stream of thoughts going on in the background of your mind that comment on and evaluate everything. When you get tired by the end of the day, you lie down to sleep only to be troubled by all that thinking that keeps on with a momentum of its own, reviewing, planning, fearing, hoping, and so on. The compulsive, involuntary inner chatter doesn't want to quit. It seems impossible to stop doing and rest in peace. Then you lie awake thinking about the latest problem, which is trying to sleep when you want to sleep, and your mind is racing. Chronic insomnia is a byproduct of being stuck in becoming. The way to cure it permanently is to open to being and then live in becoming from the perspective of being. That's what it means to be fundamentally balanced. The good news about being fundamentally unbalanced is that you don't need to do anything to become balanced. You don't need to do anything in the sense that there's nothing to gain or achieve or accomplish. There's no future goal you have to meet. The reason you don't need to do anything is you already are everything that you need to be. All that's required is letting go of what's obstructing you realizing that. So, how do you master letting go? If the way to wisdom is non-attachment, how is it possible to be wise? It's impossible to be wise by mastering the art of thinking. In multiple ways, sages all teach that. Since it can't be done, drop that idea. Thinking is conceptualizing. A concept is a principle of classification. If you have the concept of a horse, you're able to sort forms into horses and non-horses. So, from a logical perspective, all thoughts or judgments are, at best, only partial or incomplete. Furthermore, there are multiple ways to classify forms, and there's no one way that works best for all purposes. That's why the wise hold their beliefs lightly rather than clinging to them tightly. In fact, as much as possible, it's best to let them all go. If you'll observe your own thoughts, you'll soon notice that at least 80 to 90% of them are either useless or counterproductive. They're typically stale and repetitive. They're like a screen or filter that obstructs direct apprehension of reality. Perception is important because it's the only possible source for understanding the existence and nature of bodies. Many people seem to believe that their perceptions display reality accurately. No, the ways in which we understand the world affect how we perceive it. As multiple psychological experiments have demonstrated, our conceptual hierarchies yield expectations about what we perceive, and those expectations influence how and what we perceive. Philosophers classify judgments as either knowledge or opinion. The difference is that there's no such thing as false knowledge, whereas opinions may be true or false. In other words, the idea of knowledge goes with the idea of certainty or indubitability. Upon examination, except for what Hume called relations of ideas, we know very little. It's possible, for example, to know that red is a color. It's possible to be ignorant of that because if one is acquainted with red, one won't understand it. But it's impossible, once understood, to think how we could be mistaken about it. There are no uncolored reds. That's incoherent. The evidence for that is demonstrative. It's also not very valuable. If we want to know whether a flower or a tie is red, that's a different matter. The evidence for believing that a flower is red is perceptual. Since perceptions can always be mistaken, as skeptics have argued for millennia, the evidence for the belief that a flower is red is at best non-demonstrative. Is it possible to know what to do or what to be? That's the fundamental question of ethics. At least in the case of doing, no, it's not. Why? It's because it's not only the intention with which we act that matters, but also the consequences of our actions. If someone with good intentions accidentally started a war, that person would not have done something that's right to have done. Since we lack knowledge of all the future consequences of our actions, it's impossible to distinguish between a right and a wrong action in the present moment. If so, that relieves me of some responsibility here. I don't claim to know how you should realize your true nature. In fact, I never claim to know the difference between a right and a wrong action because all of them are like shots in the dark that can have unintended consequences. And also fail, of course. I do have an opinion based on over 30 years of daily experience about how it might be best for you to proceed if you're a beginner. There are many different practices. One will work for you. It's just a matter of finding an effective one and mastering it. If you already have a practice that's working well for you, use that. I have elsewhere, in multiple places, described how to do Zazen, which is the distinctive practice of Zen Buddhism. I recommend an intensified breathing practice. Begin with the very simple practice of noticing your breathing. In the following video, I'll explain how it can be intensified to make it even easier and more effective. Its purpose is to free you from the tyranny of excessive thoughting. When that liberation occurs, you'll automatically realize your true nature. Once you're free to think or not think, when you want to sleep, you can simply choose not to think and enjoy stillness. You'll quickly be able to fall asleep naturally. No more racing mind insomnia. In the next video, I'll help you put practicing into perspective. Permit me to describe ideal conditions. The closer you're able to come to them, the better. Stilling the body greatly aids learning how to still thoughts. So, make it as easy as possible on yourself by first stilling the body before stilling thoughts. Begin with a quiet room where you won't be disturbed. It should have a comfortable temperature. It should be either dark or have dim light. Lie on your back on a flat surface, or if you have one, even better, a recliner. If you're on a bed or on a floor, put a pillow under your knees to take the strain off your lower back. You'll likely be more comfortable with a small pillow under the back of your head as well. Put your legs together and then relax them. Put your upper arms next to your torso. Put your hands on or next to your hips, whichever's more comfortable. Neck straight, close your eyes, relax your whole body. Let it sink down. Set some kind of timer so that you'll be alerted when to stop without having to think about when to stop. You may start with just 1 minute or 5 minutes and add a minute each time until you're doing 20 minutes. Do 2 sessions daily. Do your first session with your morning routine and do your second session just before going to bed or perhaps just before dinner. Inhale through the nose. If you have to breathe through your mouth, that's all right. It's best to imagine the air not just going into your lungs, but all the way down to your feet. Exhale. Although you may find it helpful to pause slightly at the end of each exhalation, it's probably best just to breathe naturally. Repeat. After a while, your breathing will become slower, deeper, quieter. Keep noticing the breath moving in and out. Here's the practice. When a thought arises, drop it as soon as you notice it and return to focusing on your breathing. Don't try to prevent thoughts from arising, and don't spin them into stories when they do arise. Surrender them as soon as you notice them. Dozens of times, hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands of times. For the first few weeks or months, counting inhalations and exhalations can help. Simply count from 1 to 10 and repeat. The first inhalation is 1, the first exhalation is 2, the third inhalation is 3, the second exhalation is 4, and so on up to 10, and then begin again at 1. When you can do that without getting lost in thought for 15 or 20 minutes, then the practice becomes counting only your exhalations. As much as possible during the rest of the day, notice your breathing. Notice your breathing. The practice is not to separate from your breathing. Instead of getting 100% lost in whatever you're doing, get in the habit of reserving some attention for your breathing. Even if you're doing something that requires all your exertion, such as, say, squats or deadlifts, there should be some part of awareness standing back from whatever you're doing. Only that is balanced living.